What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, I think today is my favorite pod of the year to put together. That's saying a lot.
Okay.
It is week one. Duh, obviously. I feel like this is one of the first times all year during the whole week, when nothing can get me down. Nothing. And I know I talked about my mood, going into week 0 and like football is the great thing that kind of saves in some of those spots. But week 1, the buzz is in the air. It feels really good. You are in Austin right now. I can assume you're doing a little bit of intel for Alabama ahead of the week 2 matchup, correct?
That's exactly what I'm doing. I peeped the stadium, couldn't really park because, of course, you got to have 7 different permits. You got to be an oil donor. You got to have ranches.
Boom. Get it?
There you go. Yeah, you got to have ranches to be able to park near that stadium. So kind of did a little drive-by. Was figured it out. It's a wild. If you guys have never been here, it's a wild place. It's I always assumed Austin was like actually a college town, and no, it's a massive city with a massive stadium. And it's funny because their stadium would look big if it wasn't in the middle of a city. But like if you put Bryant-Denny in the middle of a city, it would look shorter than skyscrapers. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, dang, this actually looks tiny. And I'm like, wait, no, this city is just massive.
Yeah, it's weird. There are a few stadiums like that in college football that you're reminded, oh, this is an actual place besides just the university. And I know that a lot would change if you took the university out of a specific like big city. Like Columbus is another example of that, where
that city's huge.
Big place, and not a typical college town at all, where it just feels like, oh, I can see the stadium from space. Certain places are like that, and then certain places aren't. We got a lot to get to. We have a ton to get to. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. SEC is on pace to go 56-0 in non-conference play. Shout out to Vandy, who squeaked that one out. Little rain delay. Your boy stayed up until 12:40 a.m. watching that. No big deal. We're just grinding. That's what we do. Week 0, no big deal.
Like you said, you don't got to get ready if you stay ready, man. You're already in mid-season form watching Vandy, Hawaii. It only gets better from here, really.
The mid-season form was having the game on when it was 35-14, thinking I really like a lot. I like Vandy's got like 5 or 6 guys that I keep telling myself, and I promise we're not going to go in depth on Vandy, but Vandy has 5 or 6 guys that I tell myself they can make a play in any given moment. And I kept telling myself, my AJ Swan prediction of 6 touchdown passes is going to come true. I need to stay up and watch this. And then I stayed up and had to watch Vandy essentially hold on for dear life and need an interception to be able to close it out. But that's neither here nor there. 56-0, the SEC is on pace to go in non-conference play. Plan for today. Barrett Sallee is going to join us in a little week 0 perspective. We don't spend too much time on that, but just to make sense of a couple of the things that we saw from Notre Dame, USC, he's got some SEC predictions that might ruffle a couple of feathers here and there. Talk about who gets fired, playoff stuff, more. We're going to close with Bold and Brash week 1 edition and Lad of the Week. Week 1 picks and over-unders. If you've never listened to our preview pod before, this is going to be a little bit different than what we've typically done for those who have listened before. We're going to tweak just a couple of things. Still going to be mostly the same. We're still going to do our over-unders, all that stuff. But rather than trying to preview 14 games, most of which are expected to be massive blowouts, we're only going to do full previews for Power 5 versus Power 5 games involving SEC teams this year. That's the way this is going to work. So we'll have our usual over-unders, picks against the spread for those. But we're doing something that I'm going to call 3 wishes until I come up with a better name. I was just thinking genie in a bottle. I don't know why they settled on 3 wishes that you get. You wish for more wishes every single time. Duh, obviously.
Every time.
Yeah. Just 3 things that I want to see over the weekend, big picture items. So we'll hit on some of the other teams that obviously have more favorable matchups in week 1. And then we will do lock of the week, which was incredible last year, despite the fact that my regular picks were anything but incredible. So feel free to fade all of my regular picks. Note that because we're recording this on Monday afternoon this week, those Thursday games, Mizzou is hosting South Dakota, Florida, obviously on the road against Utah. Those spreads are probably going to change. So don't take those necessarily verbatim if you're hearing people talk about them earlier in the week. After this week, we'll have pretty much a normal schedule with preview pods coming out on Thursday morning. That's going to be the plan. So Florida at Utah. Number 14, Utah, America's team, is a touchdown favorite, 7 points, a line that's moved all over the place. And it's moved all over the place because of our over-under, which is 0.5 snaps for Cam Rising. I don't know. I really don't know. We could see that line move a lot more based on Cam Rising. He has said this could be a true game time decision for him coming off the torn ACL. Kyle Whittingham is super secretive when it comes to injuries, especially with Rising. If you kind of look at the way he's talked about it the last couple of years, even not just with this, I'm willing to admit something, Will. When I said clip it after Cam Rising is definitely playing in this game, your boy, he got a little ahead of himself, a little ahead of his skis. Never been skiing, but I got ahead of them. I know that. Okay. I'm just going to go on record and say, I don't know just yet. I would still think he's going to play, but I feel not as good about that. I will not be saying clip this. Okay. Well, that will not be the case today. I think someone that tough is going to be playing, though. Hester always says that he's the official quarterback of the all meathead team that he and Bobby Carpenter do, because he's the most fearless quarterback in the country. And that could be what brings him back too early. Who knows? That's probably also why he's had 2 major knee surgeries in the Rose Bowl alone, which is weird. For Florida, though, this is monumental for a couple of reasons. I get that last year's game was not a barometer of the season ahead. I don't remember how we were pretty much. I don't want to say that we were definitely lower than the consensus on Florida after that game when expectations went through the roof. Do you remember what we said after that game? Because I was trying to think of that today as to like the way that we phrased it, but there was something that basically said, everybody chill and let's realize that this game could have gone a different way very easily, if not for an interception. A really nice play made in the end zone.
Right. Yeah, no, I think, you did, or I did come away from that game thinking a little bit of the stereotypical, these Pac-12 linemen are just over their heads. I mean, the Florida lines got after it in that game, and it was crazy the way that, like, Florida came in and played like the veteran team for 1 week. And I was like, but once you kind of get in to the SEC, once you start getting the attrition, as much as we love our thick king, Desmond Watson, he's not out there for the whole game. You know what I'm saying? And Florida's depth after that started to come through. But that's why college football is so great. For any Saturday, those guys can shine and have their moment. So yeah, it seemed like it was just the home field mattered a lot, and those boys came ready to play for Billy Napier for a week.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between saying that there's a chance for a big win versus something is going to be a sign of future success, and those are two different things. In the case of Florida, that's how it played out last year. But if you're Billy Napier, your defensive coordinator hire, Austin Armstrong, I don't care if they got their 5th string quarterback for Utah, which they might. Who knows? You got a chance to make a statement on national television. Go up to Utah and push that team around. Do something that nobody does. Nobody pushes Utah around. That's just not the way that they get beat. Rarely do we see that happen even when they lose. And the fact that this game is at Utah, a place that they haven't lost at since 2020. They haven't lost at with fans, their home fans in attendance since 2018. It's been 5 years since they lost at home with a home crowd. So I keep coming back to this. Like, you just need to see these signs of life from your defense. And especially if there's a 3rd or 4th string quarterback in there. And if they're throwing the ball over the place, that's not going to make you feel particularly good. But if you're Billy Napier, you need to show that your offense can avoid those catastrophic mistakes with a very, very big spotlight. I don't think Florida does that enough to win this game. I think it's an up and down showing from Graham Mertz, and he gives us some reasons to think maybe Billy Napier was right. Maybe he was right. And then I think we ultimately get too many moments where we say, that's just not enough. That's just not enough. If you're going to beat a team of this caliber, you need to fit that ball into a tighter window on the road. You need to be able to make that big time play on 3rd and 12. Utah's got 4 preseason All Pac-12 guys in the front 7. I mean, it is a loaded group up front. Florida's got 1 returning starter on the offensive line. We've talked about that a lot. The attrition there is the thing that gives you pause. So if Utah is able to limit what Florida does best, which is run the football with Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne, I think they have a path to win. And I think Utah wins kind of a low-scoring thriller. That's the way this plays out. But I'll say Florida covers. I'll say they cover +7, and instead this is more like a 21-17 type game. And we have at least moments where we think Florida's about to pull off the upset, much like last year, where it was truly a down-to-the-wire game, even when Utah's driving at the very end, and Florida makes the big defensive play, Amari Burney in the end zone. How do you see this playing out? Do you think Florida covers this one, kind of regardless of the quarterback situation with Utah, or is this going to be ugly?
Yeah, I think if you're Utah, you want to get out and run. I mean, we've seen Utah in these Rose Bowls that are, up in the 40s and they're getting up and down the field. And I think that a low scoring game is a nightmare for them. They've already lost one of those to Florida, obviously. But in a game where these couple of 5 stars or high 4 stars that Billy Napier has brought in can make the difference, I think that Utah needs to go out there and send a message early and say, hey, like you said, young defensive coordinator, we're gonna capitalize on your mistakes. We're gonna use our synergy for us. And I mean, I think as a society, we all want to see Cam Rising and Graham Mertz together. If nothing else, they can celebrate their 10-year high school union together. It'd be great. But I think that's just two guys that we've seen a lot of, and I think that this is why guys stay and they are these leaders, and especially for a guy like Cam Rising, who, not to disparage the guy, but he's so clearly a college quarterback. Especially with all the injuries, he has no incentive to protect his future. He really this is going to be it for him, I think. And so, yeah, I think it would be tough to not see him because he's just the heart and soul of Utah football. But at the same time, if you're Kyle Whittingham, you're kind of at this point where it's like, hey man, we've beaten Alabama. We can't lose to Florida twice in a row. That's just not what we do here. And if they do, that's going to kind of cast it out. Not that the Pac-12 even has anything left to fight for because they're gone, but that's going to cast it out of everything happening out there because, doing it once is a fluke. Doing it twice is a trend. And yeah, I think that Utah, almost no matter their quarterback situation, it doesn't do them any good to play conservative at home. So I'm going to say Utah's going to score up in the 30s, probably allow kind of like a high teens, low 20s. So I think Utah's going to cover.
I have, for whatever reason, I have just a weird feeling that no matter who plays quarterback for Utah, I can just picture Austin Armstrong on the sidelines celebrating like crazy. And they're doing the profile of him on ESPN. And this young defensive coordinator is dialing up all these unique pressures. And it's a little bit of a tough go for Utah. I don't know why I picture that, but I just have a feeling that part is going to be more of a hit than a miss for Florida this year. And it's going to keep them in a lot of games. I really think that, despite the pretty low projection in my personal crystal ball at 6-6. But I wonder if some of that defensive belief kind of starts, and at least maybe a few of those moments with Graham Mertz makes us believe this is going to look different than it did with Anthony Richardson. I'm not breaking news by saying that, but there are moments in which we think, okay, this guy is going to give you maybe a little bit of a higher floor. He's not going to go 36 minutes of game time without a completion, and he's going to keep you in some of these moments. That might be a little bit optimistic. I don't know. I still have Utah winning this game without knowing the final decision with Cam Rising playing in this game or not. But I think it's going to be a really good game. I'm looking forward to this one on Thursday nights. Okay. Virginia, I call it a road game because it basically is. I mean, we're going to Nashville to play Tennessee, number 12 Tennessee. Tennessee's a 28.5-point favorite. This game in Nissan Stadium, home to the Tennessee Titans for now. The over-under this is a fun one. And I'm going to try and not beat this to death too much, but we got to bring it up on the first pod, his first start of the year. The over-under is 68.5 air yards for Joe Milton's longest pass of the day, and it can be incomplete. It doesn't have to be a completed pass. Probably will be.
Right, yeah.
I think.
Attempt. If we're going attempts, 100.
Yeah, make it a cool hundo. Let's see Tennessee get backed up deep in its own territory, just so that we can see that, to have that moment. I was watching the pass that he had on the opening possession to Jalen Hyatt against Vandy, where it was, I remember thinking at the time, man, he really did not step into that at all. And Hyatt had to slow down. He had to slow down to catch this ball that traveled 61 yards. That was not the deepest drop in the world. He's not taking an 8-step drop here and winding it up and really launching into one like he's Doug Flutie against Miami or something like that. I mean, this was so effortless. And I wonder if there are moments in this game in which we see that arm on display and it's not connecting in that manner. I am interested in how Josh Heupel manages Joe Milton in the season opener. How many of those chances do you want to take? Do you know him well enough to say that's what gets him going? Because I thought it did against Vandy, and once he connected on that, it allowed him to settle in, and it wasn't like he was picking apart the Vandy defense in that game last year. Take that for what it is. The conditions dictated how that was going to be played. But still, I wonder how that is going to look, because Virginia was actually tied with Iowa last year for fewest plays of 30 yards allowed all year.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so as bad as Virginia was, they did not give up those home run plays. 3 plays allowed of 40 yards was the fewest in Power 5. That's pretty good. Tennessee could do that in a quarter. So I mean, they probably would. Tennessee could do that on the opening drive if they really wanted to. If they really set their mind to it, I believe that they could have 120 yards of offense on that first drive. A couple years ago, think back to that first Joe Milton start at Tennessee, where it was that, what was it? I think it was a Thursday night game against Bowling Green.
Bowling Green, yep.
Yeah. Bowling Green was, as you would say, basura.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't really get into a rhythm. Got off to that great start because that's what the Josh Heupel offense was in year one. It was nobody in human history is capable of stopping us on the opening drive. And then he really couldn't settle into that rhythm. I would guess that this is going to be a really run-heavy day for Tennessee with Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson. They have that floor that is so good with that ground game. And even though they've dealt with some injuries with the offensive line, some questions there, I just think that the tempo that they play at, they should be able to control the line of scrimmage. That's why the spread is 4 touchdowns. For as many questions as we have about Joe Milton, you shouldn't really question that Tennessee ground game. It is worth noting again, Virginia, top third in the country in yards per rush allowed last year. Not basura there, but didn't really face teams that could establish the run like Tennessee. I don't think that will be something that they fall back on enough to be able to even keep this one close. I think Tennessee, in front of what should be a home crowd, should dominate from start to finish. When I was at Orlando for the NCAA tournament, and Virginia and Tennessee fans were both there. You couldn't tell who was who. I remember walking the parking lot. It's just a sea of orange. I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, okay. That's Tennessee fan there. That's Tennessee fan there. Okay, they're all Tennessee fans. Yeah, okay, I get it. And then I saw like the one Virginia fan that was there for a little bit. Virginia was getting.
You got to be aware in that situation and wear like the deep blue if you're a Virginia fan, because it's like, look, these oranges, while they are wildly different from a distance, it just seems like we're all on one team, and that team is Tennessee.
Yes, if I see orange at Nissan Stadium, I'm just going to assume that's Tennessee orange. Okay, it is not Virginia orange. I expect that Tennessee's going to roll in this one. Even like I think they win this one 42-7. I will probably have Tennessee fans in my mentions if and when Joe Milton puts together 3 ridiculous plays in this one. I still think that this should be a blowout, and this should not be particularly close. I don't want to say sound the alarms if this is close, because this is the type of team that Tennessee would just blow out of the water last year and would not have a chance of staying on the field with them. How do you see this playing out? Do you see this as an opener in which Joe Milton should have a lot of success, and we're probably going to end up just praising Josh Heupel's offense?
Yeah, man, I'm glad that you brought up that Bowling Green start. You know, I'm getting a little bit of deja vu because I'm going to UCF Kent State this year. And as we always joke about, I was rained out of the UCF Boise game watching that Bowling Green Tennessee game with Joe Milton starting. And I really wanted to just be like, this is just a classic situation where Joe Milton and Josh Heupel could struggle to start off the year. You know, as we've talked about, they kind of get it together as the season goes on. And, you know, when that offense is bad, it's very bad. But at the same time, this is just not a good Virginia team. Like, I can't, even one of the mid Bronco Mendenhall teams, I would be like, okay, guys, watch out. They could be a little bit scary. But I mean, this is obviously a Virginia team that had like part of their season canceled last year. We're just not really sure what they are. And so point being, like, they've taken a huge step back from the team that we all saw in Dan Mullen's famous Orange Bowl. Who could forget? But this is just like a wildly different team that is just not even, doesn't have the Jimmies and Joes to make Tennessee pay. And I love that stat about the deep passing. But to your point, it almost doesn't matter because of the amount of threats they have in the ground game, where it's like, yeah, it'd be nice if it's there to go ahead and take those deep shots, but you don't need those to beat a team like Virginia just because they're kind of sorry. So that would be a nice thing to be good at if they weren't so trash at everything else. But it's like, if that's all you have going for you, Tennessee has some dudes, and that's probably going to be it. So yeah, I think that they will sputter a little bit. Like, I don't think it's going to be this beat down like we saw kind of to start off last year. Because their team started off hot last year in those out of conference games. But yeah, I think Virginia's too trash. So I think maybe, you know, we all another Clemson assistant, Tony Elliott. You know, I have no reason to expect he's gonna, you know, get them back to where they were. Which again, they were a solid team for a couple of years there, but they just simply seem to not be anymore.
Yeah, the notion that Virginia is going to be able to play with a team at this level and play at that pace, maybe they're better set up for this early in the season as opposed to playing this game later in the year. But yeah, I just can't get on board with that. For as much skepticism as I have about Milton as a whole, I think he should be fine in this game. Imagine having to catch that first pass from Joe Milton.
A rocket.
My God. Brew McCoy is just sitting there like, God, please don't have this first pass come my way. It's going to be 75 miles an hour. Just going to put all of his mustard on it as humanly possible. Yeah, balls roll week 1. Okay.
It's a screen pass, and it's small in the hands. It like breaks his pinky finger. He's like, whoa, relax, Joe.
Stuck in the helmet. You're just like, oh my God.
He's like, where'd it go?
This cat. Take it easy, Joe. Let's take it down. Bazooka, we put it in the holster, okay? All right, North Carolina, 2.5-point favorite against South Carolina in Charlotte. The over-under I have, you know this. It's over-under of my shot. Oh, it's over-under of shots of my man, Gene Chizik.
Mm-hmm.
I texted him this morning, wish him the best. Hope all is well with Eugene. It's been a while. You know, I haven't wanted to, you know, I wasn't going to like text him after a couple of those rough games last year. Thought about it, decided not to. Like, hey, I'm still in your corner, man. You know, I'm your biggest fan in the world. But I also hope that Spencer Rattler's wish comes true. He is trying to, along with Drake May, put on a show. That was his words. I want a show. I think this game could give us a show. I've already talked a lot about how I think this game checks a lot of boxes, even though it isn't some preseason top 5 matchup. But I think for a college game day game, this is going to be the fun primetime game that you're going to want to flip on after your team has already played, or maybe your team is at halftime or something like that. And you're going to want to watch this one because you've got 2 incredibly intriguing quarterbacks with NFL abilities. You've got 2 guys working with new coordinators. Maybe you don't care about that, but you probably do care about the fact that this game has an over-under of 64.5. Okay, these defenses last year, again, we don't trash Gene Chizik. That's not what we do. But let's just say there's room for improvement on that side of the ball. It's one of the highest totals all weekend. Easily the highest.
We're pro-growth is what we are. We think everyone could just be a little bit better. So
that's what the entire offseason is about. Everyone will improve. No one is going to regress. That includes the UNC defense, who will obviously get better. You know,
he got his guys in there. Those bad eggs from the past regime are gone. Come on now.
Yeah, it's year 1. We don't judge year 1 coaches. That's not what we do on this podcast. Year 2, maybe a little bit of judgment. I think that this ends up being a really fun game. I do. You just never know with Beamer if they're going to bust out a fake punt, trick play. His bowl game appearances so far have been incredibly fun. Of course, one of which was against UNC in the Mayo Bowl. I'm selling this because I think this game will be worth the attention that it is getting with a primetime slot on Saturday night. Maybe we'll get a last-minute announcement that stud UNC receiver Tez Walker is eligible, but that would require something that I'm not holding my breath on, which is the NCAA being prompt about an appeal for eligibility. This situation is, if you're mad about the Mason Smith thing, this is probably worse. This is so frustrating. If you don't know, like, Tez Walker, what's going on right now, 2-time transfer. So yes, I get it. The immediate eligibility thing, that's all a question mark with those guys. But he didn't play at NC Central in 2020 because they had a canceled COVID year. Did not play college football there. He has only played college football at Kent State. He was there the last 2 years. He was awesome. He was a huge transfer portal addition for UNC. And the NCAA changed the rules in January to crack down on the 2-time transfer stuff after he had already transferred to UNC. So it's really weird. It's messed up. He should be playing. They found out the first week of August that he's not going to be able to play. It's the week of the game. As of this recording, he has no word on whether or not he's going to be able to play in this one. He's like, it's BS. He's right. He's 100% right. At least get some clarity. Like, how long does it take to listen to an appeal when the case has already been made? It's been very, very obvious. So that could have a huge impact on this one, no matter how that ruling comes down, because he is Drake May's top target, or at least he's expected to be. I think we get a really shaky Spencer Rattler start and a more impressive Spencer Rattler finish. Kind of like last year, a little bit like last year. He's got some banged up wideouts right now, which you worry about. Juice Wells, you're like, hey, he's not going to be 100%. Maybe Xavier Legette, not quite at full go for this one. Shane Beamer's talked a lot about that during fall camp. You know, these guys will be ready to go for week 1. They're banged up right now. But I don't know. Like, I think it could very much look like bad Spencer Rattler in the first quarter, at least, maybe even the whole first half, where he's forcing the action. He knows that the backfield depth isn't there. He knows that Drake May is on that other sideline, and he's going to need to make some big-time plays. If he presses early on, nobody's going to be surprised. That would be the Spencer Rattler that we've seen a lot of times throughout his career. But I think he settles in nicely. And I think we get a fun back-and-forth game that is really reminiscent of the bowl game that South Carolina played in against Notre Dame. I think it's shades of that. huge momentum swinging plays left and right. You don't know when they're going to come. Right when you think a quarterback has it figured out, Tyler Buckner throws a pick in the end zone, a pick six in the end zone. You're just like, this game is madness. It's fun. I think the big momentum shifting play late that happens is South Carolina blocks a punt to set up a go-ahead rushing score. South Carolina wins this outright. Beamer ball is alive and well. He improves to 2-0 against Mac Brown.
So, couple of questions for you. I don't understand. I mean, and I don't pretend to be on the boots on the ground of North Carolina football, but I don't understand how having Drake May alone simply isn't enough to propel them a little bit above 21st, considering how well they played above expectations last year. I mean, you talked about the transfer, but that's a new guy. Like, why are they supposed to be so much worse than last year? Just losing Phil Longo?
Losing Phil Longo is definitely part of it. It's not that it's reflected in the Heisman odds with him too. There was
right, and he's like way down there. Yeah,
he's like seventh. I want to say he's like seventh or eighth in the Heisman odds, which I don't think Drake May is going to win the Heisman Trophy this year. I've gone on record saying that if he was going to win it, he was going to have to win it last year. You got to win it when you're breaking out, but because the expectations for him will be so much higher this year, that's definitely part of it. If I were really critical and totally unbiased, this is what I would say. Defense really didn't show you a whole lot to have faith in it. And there's a little bit of this with UNC of, well, we saw Sam Howell 2 years ago when he came back for that year. And I said he was the best quarterback in college football. And I thought it was a hot take to say that he was better than Spencer Rattler coming into that year. And they had a lot of pieces to replace coming into that season. And there was this, you're replacing your backfield with Michael Carter, Javonte Williams. And they were really, really bad for too much of that season. And it was like, it's Sam Howell and everybody else. So there's a little bit of that, I think, with Drake May, especially now with this Tez Walker ruling. So that could be why their ranking's a little bit lower. And they didn't finish very well. I mean, they had a start where people questioned how good they were because they didn't beat a ton of really good teams. And then they finished the way that they did. If they had beat Oregon in the bowl game, it would have been different, but they weren't able to hold on to that one. So that's probably why.
I'm fired up for this one, man. Either way, I think both of these teams are incomplete. I think they both have a lot to learn, and we're going to learn a lot about both of them. I think this is similar to the Arkansas-Kansas game, where I was like, well, the winner of this game should just be called Arkansas or Kansas. This should be the team that is allowed to put Carolina in bold letters on their hoodies. I think that we should have no bold letter Carolina hoodies from one of these teams after they lose. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, I think that again, so interesting because you feel like these teams, but then also these are going to be new versions. I think that, again, being unbiased, the defense was pretty tough last year for UNC. But this, if we think about where South Carolina was at this point last year, I mean, they were not good. They were struggling to get everything put together. And now they're kind of coming off, the kind of weird offseason they had. Spencer Rattler obviously is a steadying presence, but his play itself is up and down. So I actually think I'm going to go with North Carolina here. I think that all their defense has to do is not give up the type of day that Tennessee had. And obviously South Carolina has been the thing that South Carolina does well is unpredictable, right? So it's like hard to be like, well, because exactly what you just said, that exact situation where they block a punt and then rush one in, very possible happen. Things like that happened to them a ton last year. But when I'm thinking about previewing a game, it's like, it's hard to imagine that to be, to start off a year that way. So I think that as weird as it sounds, having a solid amount of good tape, the way that Drake May does, is better than a lot of up and down tape, the way that Spencer Rattler does. And I think that this team has to do a lot to get on one page. Whereas UNC, I feel like, they're in year two of kind of the defense being a little bit unstable, whereas we're not sure what the South Carolina offense is going to be. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think that little bit of experience, as strange as that sounds when you're talking about Spencer Rattler, we feel like we've seen forever. I think it's going to help North Carolina in this one.
If he plays a game that makes you think he's just never going to get it, I don't think anybody would be that surprised. I don't. And you're right. South Carolina has holes. This is a team that has major questions in a few key areas, especially the backfield, especially at the line of scrimmage. I hope for his sake, just because I love his story and I love what he's represented to the university, but I hope Takarian Joyner doesn't become a punchline of their RB1 is a converted receiver, quarterback receiver. That would be a really tough thing if that continued. And if he instead emerged as this guy who's a reliable piece of the offense and is more consistent with his touches, way more consistent than he was in the Marcus Satterfield offense, I think South Carolina fans would feel so much better. But there are a lot of questions. And I did find myself this entire offseason feeling like, yes, I ask all these questions. And then I just find myself looking up and be like, oh, I guess they beat them. Oh, look, wow, they won as an underdog here. Oh, they beat the crap out of Auburn when they weren't supposed to. Oh, they helped lead to the end of the Dan Mullen era at Florida. Oh, they did that. Like they do these things that don't make sense on paper because of the unique ways that they can score. And I think they might get a couple of those in this game, but should be a fun one. Has definite game of the day potential, knowing what these two teams have working in their favor, and hopefully that overhits.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like the Jaheim Bell transfer is a guy that I hated for both sides of it, because it's like, oh, great, I wanted to see him another year with Spencer Rattler. I wanted to see that little release valve for him, and that might get their offense on the same page. On the other end, I'm like, great, now I got to see this guy at Florida State. This is awesome. Yep. So, yeah, I just wish they still had him, because that would make me feel weirdly way better, because he was such a dynamic athlete, especially towards the end of the year.
Let's talk about that team, Jaheim Bell's new squad, Florida State. No. Yeah, you knew we were going to get to it. Number 5 LSU, 2.5-point favorite against number 8 Florida State. The game of opening weekend in my neck of the woods down here in Orlando. We will both be there. Cannot wait. That's going to be so much fun. Like when you look at matchups a few years out, you just don't know how it's going to break. And there are so many moments leading up to this one where I thought, like, man, this is going to kind of suck. Like this is, especially like what LSU went through 2020, 2021, and Florida State up until obviously the latter half of last season, just made you think, man, this one really is not going to maybe even won't be worth my time to go to this one. And now we're looking up and it's a matchup of top 10 teams. The over under I have 5 shots of Mason Smith and sweats on the LSU sideline.
Yeah, man.
I get so frustrated thinking about it. I really do. I two of the biggest games of opening weekend, we have a star player sitting out because of an NCAA punishment in the year of our Lord 2023.
When everyone's not only legally cheating, but still illegally cheating openly. That's the best part. And like, yeah, I mean, I love that context about the North Carolina guy, because his situation is worse. It's the fact that he did something that was legal when he did it, and then it got rolled back. Whereas Mason Smith's situation is like, well, you guys, like, whenever he did his quote unquote infraction, it was technically illegal, but that was so long ago that it isn't even, wouldn't be viewed that way today. But yeah, I think that the NCAA is just making no favors for itself, as the conferences start imploding, as all the money starts getting in there. It's like, this is when we need the NCAA the most to actually step in and be, the adult in the room. And they're just like sitting there with their heads in their books, like Randall from Recess. And they're just like, oh, do you have your hall pass? And it's like, brother, the issues with the sport are so much deeper than this. You need to prioritize your life. Worry about you first, NCAA. All right. You're about to be banished. If this keeps going this way, you'll have no power and just March Madness.
Is that habeas corpus or ex post facto? I'm not really good with Latin terms, but it's one of those things. I think there's that either Mason Smith or Tez Walker is dealing with right now. But yeah, it's stupid. It's really, really stupid. I wanted to see Mason Smith play in person. I will, I guess, settle for seeing Harold Perkins, who, look, his most notable play in this game last year was what? Penalty on special teams, right?
Yeah. And Brian Kelly finally came out and was like, hey, we're not really using him as a traditional middle linebacker. We play a little prank on you. Like, they were like, we're going to rove him around, make him a little bit of chaos. Somebody compared it to what Michael Parsons did in his rookie year with the Cowboys, where like they were like, hey, you're going to have to account for him in every snap. And that was the big thing with me and Harold Perkins. If you just stick him in the middle of the defense and you're like, all right, well, at least we have a couple of seconds before Harold Perkins is charging at me like the water boy. But apparently they're going to move him around the line of scrimmage and make the defense like kind of realize where he's at. And that's all I can hope for as an LSU fan.
Yeah, I hope that his duties are in the backfield and not behind him. I don't need to see Harold Perkins trying to cover in space that much. And I realize that in a modern defense, you have to be able to do that. Everybody has to be able to cover unless you're playing interior defensive line, I guess, to a certain extent. But I want to see him in those exact spots. The battle between he and Jordan Travis is the battle of opening weekend. And this is opening weekend. It's going to be awesome. What I thought Jordan Travis mastered last year that wasn't there in years past whenever I watched him was the scramble while keeping all options open. I think when a quarterback scrambles, more times than not, you know what he wants to do. Like, does he want to keep a play alive to attack downfield like Bryce, like Baker, like Mahomes? Or does he want to use his legs to pick up a first down like a Jaden Daniels, like an Anthony Richardson? I thought Will Levis a lot of the time. Bo Nix at his best is really good at keeping you off balance in those spots, which is what I think Jordan Travis is so good at entering what's year 6 of college, which is just crazy. We just kind of forget the Louisville part of his career and focus on Florida State. But for me, this game, it comes down to those moments. If he is going to extend plays and at least give guys a chance to make a play, this will be a really frustrating day for Matt House and that LSU defense. They might have the right calls. They might feel good about their coverage, but they could have instances where Johnny Wilson or Keon Coleman, one of these big-bodied Florida State receivers, they just make a play in traffic to extend a drive that probably should have ended. And there's just not a whole lot you can do about that. There's really not. If you're Matt House, I think you make Perkins your spy this entire time. I think you at least hope that Jordan Travis is running for his life and trying to make those plays. You have to at least put him in those spots. And if the guy does exactly what I just said, where it's like he escapes Harold Perkins, he throws a 50-50 ball, and a 6'6" receiver goes up and makes a play, round of applause. They earned it. Okay. That's you have to give him that. That's the area where Florida State is probably going to be really good this season, even if they're not good against LSU in the opener. But I just think that there are other ways that LSU is going to have to find help in coverage. I think Omar Spates, the transfer from Oregon State, should really, really help with that. That's something he did a lot more than Harold Perkins last year. Obviously playing a different position in a different role, different defense. But I think that's going to be so big. And then on the other side of the ball, we have another elite quarterback pass rusher matchup. Jared Verse is a stud. He was projected to be a first-round pick if he had gone into the draft this past year. And instead, he's like, nope, I spent only 1 year at Florida State. He was at Albany for the first part of his career, but just a guy that absolutely exploded. He had 2 sacks in this game last year, which was really his coming out party. So you've got an All-American who's chasing Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is not going to be scared of anyone. He's not. Year 5 starter, I don't really worry about that with him. But how many times does he make those plays with his arm? He's not going to be able to outrun everybody. If he gets into those spots, where does his mindset go? Does his mindset go to, where's Brian Thomas? Where's Malik Neighbors? Okay, where's Kyron Lacey? Where are all these guys? Where's Mason Taylor downfield? Or does it default back into, I've got to do this to be able to get the edge and get to the sticks? You can't just do that against Florida State. Florida State's got too much speed. They will make this a really difficult day for him, much like they did for most of that game last year. So that's what we need to see. That's the growth of Jaden Daniels. I've been lower on Jaden Daniels, I think, than the consensus this offseason. And that's the thing right there that I want to continue to see him do against a defense that was really good last year. Florida State was number 4 in America against the pass this past year. And they returned almost everybody on that group. The only guy that they had drafted on that entire team, Florida, it was South Carolina defensive back, former South Carolina defensive back, Jamie Robinson. That's it. That was their lone draft pick. So they're confident. They're the ultimate good vibes team. They're confident coming into this game. We'll see if they're overconfident. I just worry about this matchup for LSU. I think it's a bad matchup. I'm not saying Florida State's going to be a better team, but I think this is a bad matchup. I'm a little bit more worried now without Mason Smith, and I know Mekhi Wingo is a stud. I expect him to be able to make plays, but I'm going to do LSU a favor. I'm going to be the doubter, just as Jaden Daniels said to all his teammates with the custom Beats headphones that he gifted to them. I think LSU comes up short. Florida State wins by a touchdown. There are so many vibes on the line with this one, Will. How do you see this playing out? And admittedly, you're telling yourself this is a way different game than last year, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think both teams are a little bit underrated almost last year. And I think both teams are battling being a little bit overrated coming into this year. You know, we've talked about it with FSU. They're battling that, you haven't beaten Clemson. With LSU, it's okay, well, you had some of these fluke wins and you're the A&M game. And so it's a completely different turnaround because these were teams that were both shockingly good last year. And that loss to FSU just got better and better and better as the year went on, even going through bowl season. We love a quality loss in the SEC. But no, I think that you completely hit on that as far as what makes me feel okay. So what makes me feel bad? Mason Smith being out is obviously not good. I think that the depth behind him, and like not to like get too deep into the LSU stuff, but they have a ton of transfers specifically on defense. I think that LSU's offense is one of the surest units in college football. I think the amount of guys they bring back, fifth-year starter quarterback, not all LSU obviously, but I think that those are things you feel good about. Will Campbell getting the number 7, which he decided to wear as a patch,
That's cool.
which I think was a great move because big dude wearing number 7, as a big dude, I'll tell you, makes you look a little bit bigger when you get that single digit number. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So that was a good swag team captain move by him. But yeah, I think that so what I don't like is Mason Smith. What I do like is exactly what we just talked about with Harold Perkins and Omar Speights. I'm right there with you. I think Omar Speights is actually weirdly going to be kind of the X factor here because he has played that position before, and all the way through camp, it was like, well, he's playing like Mike linebacker basically, and Perkins is playing middle, and it's like, why are we doing this? This is obviously the wrong move. And Brian Kelly did a little trick, and he was like, actually, we are flipping those two guys because I don't want to see Omar Speights rushing the passer even once. He's a guy who is a cerebral dude, team captain in the Pac-12. He's first team. He's had all these things, these reps that make me think, okay, you can adjust to this. You can cover the back end while Harold Perkins is just being released like a wild man into the other front. I think that this year, I like a lot more of what I see from LSU's offense. I think that when Jaden Daniels was finally like relaxed in this game was that final 2 minutes of like real time where he just had 2 insane drives back to back. But I think you're so on the money here about him and Jordan Travis. I think that when you see Jordan Travis, I mean, it's so funny because you look at these two guys and I was like, yeah, they're equally mobile, but Daniels had way more rushing, like 200 or 300 more rushing yards last year because he doesn't do what you just described. Once he sees that his first or second read was a little bit generous to about the first half of last year. Once he sees his first read wasn't open, the second read didn't open, he's going to take off and do his like hezzy and get the guys going and make people miss. And I want to see more of that from him because his receivers, I think LSU should trust their receivers over any group of defensive backs in America, especially in modern football where you don't see these like hard-nosed joyless murder ball guys as often. I think that these guys are built to win one-on-one matchups. I think if he can sit in the pocket and deliver the ball the way he did in the very end of that last game, I think it's going to be massive. So I do have LSU pulling this one out. Maybe it's a little bit of a homer pick. But I think at the end of the day, one thing that I do want to spot in on, and Max Toscano, my boy that does X's and O's for Valley Shook, he talked about the counter actions. Key in on the counter actions in this game. FSU absolutely ripped LSU a new one last year with these counter plays where they would start right and go left, and the whole line would be like, whoa. And like, they would just be completely like they'd never seen a counter play before. And the whole thing is like, how do you even fix that? So it's two things to defend that with LSU. It's like, well, yeah, you had this sparse class, so you need to bring in all these transfers. Hopefully these older transfers, we keep seeing these themes of like guys that have been around and, they're not as easy to trick as some of the younger recruits that we've seen in places like Florida. Like, I think that hopefully those guys will be mature enough to keep gap discipline because that's going to be the key to this game. If these guys start looking in the backfield, if these guys start getting caught, Jordan Travis wants nothing more than for you to think you have a free lane in him because he's just going to do a little bloop over the head. And so, yeah, I think that's the two things is counter plays on one side and Omar Speights on the other side trying to clean up that kind of middle of the field. But I do have LSU winning and just a small – I'm going to be having a heart attack no matter what, but hopefully it's different than last year.
Yeah, the difference between a throwaway and a jump ball might be the difference in this game. How many times is Jordan Travis forced into a throwaway versus a jump ball? Like if LSU limits those opportunities, you should feel really, really good. And like they should have a chance to be able to even have balance in this one, dare I say, because I think LSU should be able to run the football more than it did last year, and not just the rushing numbers totally skewed. If you didn't watch LSU, you thought like, oh yeah, that was actually like a fine running team, and then realize, well, it's not design runs. It's just plays that.
None of it was planned. It was just Jaden doing his thing out there. It was like an 800-yard rusher just from like vibes.
Yeah, like you need more than, all right, Josh Williams 4 yards here, Noah Kane on the goal line, 2 carries. All right, he gets in, but it's not anything that scares you. LSU establishing that in the opener would go a long way. Whoever comes out of this with a victory, man, the vibes could not be better about breaking through and getting to a playoff berth. And I say breaking through knowing that both of these teams have obviously been to the college football playoff, but still doing so with these head coaches, it would just feel so unbelievably massive. And like they would instantly be a top 3 team potentially. Is that up for grabs? I think so. Nobody's going to have a better win than either of these two teams unless Middle Tennessee goes into Alabama and pulls off a victory or something like that. But I mean, with the exception of that,
So Saban wasn't released in the depth chart in that one, so you can tell he's a little bit worried. All right.
Look, I mean, Rick Stockstill has been there for like 18 years now. We don't sleep on the Blue Raiders, not the Red Raiders, but the Blue Raiders. Okay?
We do sleep on the Red Raiders, but the Blue Raiders, we've seen them beat Miami and embarrass them. But yeah, I will say this too. I love Brian Kelly's strategy of like stressing the running game is just bringing in 8 running backs. Like he was like, we're just going to have so many running backs in this team that you guys constantly feel pressure. And I like that type of psycho move. It's just like, you know what, Emory, we just might never see you if you just decide to fumble. You might just be banished to Narnia and that'll be it for you.
I keep forgetting about Logan Diggs too. He's a guy that I probably haven't talked about enough, the Notre Dame transfer. But I was like reminded a couple of times during the offseason, oh yeah, they added him as well. They've really just tried to stockpile and just hope one of them pops. That's really what this comes down to, which LSU has not had really since Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If they can have that true like go-to back.
And this is year like 5 of us both rooting for Noah Kane to turn a corner, and hopefully this is the one. We really need it this year as LSU fans.
Yeah, I'm holding on to that Noah Kane stock. You're gonna have to take it from my cold dead hands.
Same, yeah.
Let's do 3 wishes. New idea here that we're gonna do for preview pods. First wish, SEC fans. I do not want, and I realize this is going to be tough, I do not want you to overreact to your new offensive coordinators. Either way, we've talked about it a lot this offseason. 10 new offensive coordinators in the SEC. 8 of them face either Group of 5 or FCS foes. The only 2 who do not. Dow Loggins with South Carolina at UNC, Joey Halsey at Tennessee against Virginia, a very favorable matchup. Halsey, by the way. I don't know why I said like the pop star. No, Halsey. Even those 2 guys, though, probably shouldn't overreact to what we see in the opener against porous ACC defenses. Even if they put up 45, 50 points or something like that, doesn't necessarily mean that they're ticketed for success. And the best example I could bring up is last year, Broyles Award winner, Garrett Riley, might have heard of him, went into the 4th quarter against Colorado without an offensive touchdown. People forget that. And Colorado, basura, very much last year.
The worst team in the sport, some would say. So much so they let Deion just come in there and fire everyone.
Colorado was nearing relegation status if they did not hire Deion Sanders. Let's just say that. Last year, Auburn looked like an offensive juggernaut in the opener against Mercer. Brian Harsin was doing the us against the world thing. Turns out the world was right. The world had
unfortunately the world won. I fought the world and the world won.
Chalk that one up for humankind. Okay, they were right, and I get it. Like you don't want your OC, your new offensive coordinator, to start off really bad against I don't know, Sam Houston. That would be a tough look if you did that like A&M did last year. Wasn't a new offensive coordinator. It was very much an archaic offensive coordinator in Jimbo Fisher, if you want to call him.
He was saving all the good plays for Bama. That's the thing. They got to let him call plays against just Alabama this year.
LSU too. Saved all the good plays for them.
Okay, man.
Not forget. Yeah, had to go there.
He did have the good plays there. Lots of counters as well that time.
Counters, yeah, did not work against LSU. Just saying. This is the first time where 8 months of confirmation bias is either confirmed or denied. It's something we talk about a lot. It's really simple, though. It's also week 1, someone that's new at the controls, not necessarily how the finished product is going to look. Remember the Manziel doc, where the first game, they lose to Florida, and Kingsbury is like, yeah, I should have just let Johnny loose. Mistake on my part. I'll eat that one. Mistake by the new OC. We know what happens after that. I'm not saying
the Sam Bankman-Fried of football. I don't know. This guy keeps getting paid. The Cliff Kingsbury. He's got Johnny and Pat Mahomes just going 500. Anyway,
it all goes back to 2012. I'm convinced that is the biggest thing that is working in Cliff Kingsbury's favor. If that is not at the top of his resume, I'd be stunned. It definitely is. I think we're going to get a ton of good vibes from new offensive coordinators because of how lopsided these matchups should be in theory. So just take a deep breath and realize it's might not necessarily be a sign that your team is going to score, 60 points a game.
Remember my quote last year, Connor? I may need to find something that makes me happy for a while because it won't be this after that FSU game. And I was wrong. I was very happy for most of last year.
Yes, you were. And you know what? You can't look too far into week 1. That's the moral of the story. Even though we will definitely be doing that when we react to this on Sunday, but just don't look too far into this. Number 2, my second wish is I want clarity on the Bama quarterback situation. That's all I ask. I don't need to be right on this. I just want clarity. I would like to get a feel for who this staff really supports and what the identity of this group is going to be instead of this constant shuffling of the deck. Oh, Milroe's taking first team today. Ty Simpson's got first team today. Oh, this guy's improved. That guy's improved. I bet they would like to have that figured out going into Texas. That's just my thought. It's incredible to think that the last time they let several quarterbacks pretty much have a quarterback battle in a game leading into a season was the 2016 opener against USC in Dallas. Just the most disrespectful thing ever. USC's out there. Yeah, they do the hold me back thing in the pregame, and they're like caged animals. They're ready to go, and Bama's like, you know what? Let's just shuffle through like 3 different guys. We'll figure this out. We got plenty of time. And obviously, they did. And USC looked pretty dumb after that one. But that worked out because Jalen was the guy. I don't think it's fair to expect someone to emerge quite like that. I do think it's fair to expect someone to at least look the part. Just look the part against Middle Tennessee. That's all we're asking for. My guess is that Jalen Milroe takes that first snap. I think we see Ty Simpson in the first half as well. I don't think it's going to be like 1-1-1 or anything like that. I don't think it'll be totally even. I'll be surprised if Tyler Buckner emerges. That's the only thing that would surprise me at this point. If he ends up being the guy, that would be throwing out everything that I've thought throughout this preseason. But just give me a guy. I'm tired of talking about the battle. Let's see who the Alabama starting quarterback is going to be.
Well, he's not going to, so quit asking.
No depth chart
You're still asking. He told you to quit asking like 5 years ago.
Maria Taylor handled that so unbelievably well, too. She's like, for sure. I would have just at that moment been like, back to you guys in the booth. That's it.
You could have shown him your underbelly. Yeah, no, I think that
I would have been a beta. I'm just saying, I would have been a beta through and through. She handled, just roll with it. That is how professionals get things done. But yeah,
I'll give.
Look, I just don't think that anybody's gonna even ask Saban afterwards about the quarterback situation. Just you can't be that meme for the rest of time.
Yeah, or everyone should just do it, and then what's he gonna do? He's just gonna have to keep answering. But yeah, no, I think you guys should all think about it. Just unionize, get together, and just start asking him that same question. But we've talked about it. These people have too much power. We need to know. Anyway, so yeah, I think I'm I will say this: Nick Saban, as much as I joke about it, we all acknowledge his greatness, but he hasn't really given us a lot of this game like Dabo style gamesmanship about the quarterback stuff. Like I think that he has really wanted to have his guy, let that guy be a leader, find his voice. I think that just speaks to this is the best solution for this situation at the time, which is that you want to give both guys a fair shake in a game. I think that they've both Milroe has earned it based on last year. Ty, obviously, they liked a lot of the things they saw with practice and from his high school tape. So yeah, I think that is just the best situation. I don't think it's any type of a bluff or a ruse. I genuinely think that he's trying to see who the best guy is, and he needs obviously into the season, which is these days a little bit more rare because of the amount of guys who transfer and stuff like that. But obviously that was a lot more commonplace. I mean, how many years did LSU have 2 quarterbacks? You know what I'm saying? So I think we got to relish these moments when we have them, especially a place like Alabama, because I mean, there's not been a more fun, drama-filled season. What was the 2015 season at Ohio State where they had 3 quarterbacks that were all really good? And maybe Bama has a little bit different situation. I'm not going to compare any of those guys to the leading touchdown scorer in Big Ten history in Barrett. But I think that, this is going to be a moment for all of us as college football fans to think, like you said, I mean, I'll never forget Hurts, taking that first snap, kind of fumbling it, and Lane Kiffin just being like, we're sticking with you, man. We're sticking with you. And I think that was a big moment, and it showed kind of Lane as a play caller. And I think that these stories will live forever. So it's cool to have that little bit of controversy, especially if you don't really have, someone to play for the first couple of weeks. You can just take your time. If you play at FSU, you probably need a starter.
Yeah, huge decision long term. Obviously, in the short term, not probably going to have to worry about the end result against Middle Tennessee, but could be what determines whether or not this team wins an SEC championship, plays for a national championship. Could be the decision that determines that. Third wish, I just want one Robert Patrick Petrino blow up. That's it. Just one. I don't need several. We've been asking for this for a long time. We have not had this in the SEC since year 1 of Rich Rod. The 1 year that we got of Rich Rod at Ole Miss. That's it. That's all we got.
Well, we had Pelini and Oger.
Did we get press box blowups though? Because those are contained in a different sort of way. If a guy blows up on the sideline, you're used to seeing that. That's one thing. But Petrino is he said early on that he was leaning to being in the press box as opposed to being on the sideline.
Smart.
I applaud that. That is way better. The camera can focus in on him. We're gonna get if he throws a pen off the glass, the ricochet that we're going to get to see, a different hue of red when you've got that lighting that's kind of hitting him there. He can't just put his hat down necessarily like he could on the sideline. You can't really see him. I think that we're due for one of those. I think even Aggie fans would love to see it. Like if it's in this game where they're up, I don't know, 28-0, that's a sign that A&M is on the up and up. Kirby goes berserk when they're up 52-0 in the middle of a game against Vandy. Like, why wouldn't Robert Patrick Petrino losing his mind, maybe not quite to Ken Dorsey levels, why wouldn't that be seen as a positive too? I think it would be. I would love to see it. Just give me the Petrino blow up. Maybe like a receiver runs the wrong route on 4th down, delay a game on 3rd and 2. It doesn't need to be this is World War III. This isn't going to work. But there are small little things that can happen over the course of the game that can yield this. Let's see it. Just give me that, and I'll shut up about it for a little bit because I know I've talked a lot about it.
I love the Petrino move of like classic battle strategist of like, I'm going to get the high ground in this little like ego beef. Like I'm going to be like Giovanni from Pokemon. I'm not going to do the dirty work. I'm just going to be sitting there with my hands kind of together. And yeah, I think that we're probably not going to see the Ken Dorsey one was the one I was thinking about. It was such a classic, like it was so crisp and like on time. How he like threw the headphones, covered the camera, like did all that almost like on a beat. And like, yeah, I think, I don't think at this point Bobby's got that type of gumption to him, I guess. I think he probably would just be like cursing under his breath. I think we'll get a lot of him cursing on in the broad, there'll be the lip readers being like, he just MF Jimbo 6 times in a row, and Jimbo's just on the sidelines like, yeah, all right, sounds good, buddy, and just puts the headset down. And so like, yeah, I think you need to be on that when you watch A&M games. Really look at that dichotomy because we love the hire. We're just joking. Like we both think it's like a great situation to have him call plays, but yeah, I do think that like I want to see those two personalities interact for sure.
He went 1-1 in the coordinator draft. Just saying, we're Petrino believers. We absolutely are. Okay, lock of the week. Minnesota is -7 at home against Nebraska. Only a 7-point favorite. The $5 bits of broken chair trophy is on the line. Who could forget? Faux Pelini, the legacy. If you don't know that one, look that one up. That's just the internet creating a trophy. It's beautiful. Minnesota has won 5 of 6 in this matchup. This is really just about Nebraska being basura in season openers, just straight basuras. They haven't won a season opener since 2019.
Oh my god!
Think about that. That's pretty bad. That's really bad. Northwestern was last year in Dublin, obviously. The year before that, Illinois, a game that they blow in the 4th quarter. Year before that, it's a little different. It's Ohio State. Still got some.
Well, that's like mega mind Big Ten stuff too. That's like everybody else is playing cupcakes, so we're gonna have a game that actually matters right now. And you're like, no, we don't actually want that. Just schedule a fun one. That's okay, man.
It doesn't matter though. Even when they try and schedule the fun one, they still usually find a way to mess it up. They're 4-6 in their last 10 season openers. Will they have losses to Colorado and BYU? They had a 3-point win against a non-Josh Allen Wyoming team that I was there for.
Josh Allen, that's a good note. Standard Wyoming team, not even
regular Wyoming. They had a 7-point win against Arkansas State in one of those 4 victories in season openers they've had in the last 10 years. And I know Matt Rule, he's different. He's going to fix it. Bo Pelini, Mike Riley, Scott Frost, they all contributed to that horrible decade-long run of season openers. Nebraska optimism being replaced by reality in the season opener it's really become a mainstay of the playoff era. It has become something that, look, we didn't get it in week 0. It felt like there was a little piece of me that wasn't there in week 0. And I think that was it. Not watching Nebraska blow a 4th quarter lead or something like that, try and put an onside kick or do something stupid on special teams. So yes, I will take Minnesota to cover -7. That is your first lock of the week. We're going to get off. Let's just be undefeated this year. How about that one? It's been defeated. You good with that one?
I love, for those of you that have kept up with it, Connor really hit his secret sauce when he started picking against Indiana. And I was like laughing at that, thinking about it. I was like, oh my gosh, we're picking Minnesota versus Nebraska. This is right in your wheelhouse. I feel great about this one.
Yeah, but probably going to be one of those things where now Nebraska's going to go like 9-3. I'm going to pick against them every single week. It's just going to totally flip.
Chasing the dragon of Nebraska lost it. Yeah.
Yes, we'll do that, I'm sure, throughout the year. All right, let's kick it to Barrett Sallee. We put a bow on some of the week 0 things that we saw. Talked about his SEC predictions, the weird SEC hot seat that is this year with the buyouts, and a lot of other stuff. So here's Barrett. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Barrett Sallee. Barrett, you had to just stir the pot and you made just such a controversial post week 0 statement. Everybody gets to watch Notre Dame roll to this victory in Dublin. Sam Hartman's out here looking like, I think JD Piquel said it best. He looks like a Disney character. That's a Disney prince, something like that. And you're like, hey, Notre Dame's a playoff contender. You float that out into the universe. And I don't want to say you got ratioed, but you were on the internet having to defend yourself. Like, explain why you said that after watching them whoop up on a Navy team that we don't expect to be exactly in the playoff conversation.
Okay, first things first, Sam Hartman is Jamie Dutton from Yellowstone. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks that, but he looks like Jamie Dutton from Yellowstone. Notre Dame's a playoff contender pretty much every year. They've made it twice. They've been in the playoff rankings, I think, every single season, multiple weeks. And that's with average quarterback play. And now they have really good quarterback play in Sam Hartman. So I don't really care that it's Navy. Yeah, Navy's bad. There's no doubt about that. But Notre Dame showed that they're really good. Those things can coexist, you know? So, like, for those that come out and say, oh, it was Navy. Yeah, it was Navy. They suck. But Notre Dame didn't. They look really good, and they have the missing piece of the equation. So, in normal years, Notre Dame's a playoff contender. I mean, maybe a fringe one some years, but one nonetheless. If you look at Bud Elliott's blue chip rankings, they're in there more times than not. So just by definition or by default, they are. So to go out there and say they're a contender with Sam Hartman, I don't necessarily think that's a hot take. The reaction comes from the fact that everybody either hates or loves Notre Dame and there's no in between. And also the word in that tweet, the word contender sort of gets ignored and gets replaced with potential champion, which if we're talking about contenders or we're talking about potential champions, those are two entirely different conversations. Like Michigan State in 2015 was not a national championship caliber team. Those Oklahoma teams, with the exception of maybe 17, were not national championship caliber teams. So it's reading comprehension that causes the ratio, and the fact that it's Notre Dame that causes the ratio. So I don't think it's a controversial statement. I think, again, it's people wanting to believe things that simply aren't true.
Yeah, it wasn't controversial at all to say that they're a contender for all the reasons that you outlined. I think people can kind of look at the schedule and say, well, you still got Ohio State this year. You've got USC. You've got Clemson. In theory, you're not a contender unless you win 2 of those 3 and then don't have any of those duds. But an 11-1 Notre Dame team is going to be part of the conversation. That's what history has suggested.
I would say they're in 11-1 team. If it's to one of those 3, if the loss is to one of those 3 teams, no matter what, they're in. And if the loss is to somebody else and they beat those 3 teams, then they're in too.
2-loss SEC champ could make it a little bit interesting. But like, you're right. I mean, they're at least going to be part of that. They're without a doubt. Like, if people are saying like, oh, they won't be part of that conversation at all, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. Playoff contender will take on a very different meaning after the 14 playoff era is over.
Yes.
USC though, I think if you were one of those people that went into this season saying the USC defense is going to be better. I don't know why you were saying that, because Alex Grinch is still, for whatever reason, the defensive coordinator for Lincoln Riley. But you watch that opener against San Jose State. The USC is going to the playoff and going to win a game in the playoff crowd. How worried should they be after watching what they saw?
Well, they should have never said that to begin with. But
exactly.
Yeah, very, very worried now, because it was the same USC. You know, lack of fundamentals, lack of tackling, everything that USC was last year, they showed it this year, or at least against San Jose State. So I think we can sit here at times and say, okay, it was a season opener. They kind of slugged their way through, whatever. But after what we saw last year from USC, it's a legit concern. And go back to Lincoln Riley's time at Oklahoma, it's the same exact story. So I don't even know if this is a USC thing. I think it's a Lincoln Riley thing. And there's no doubt he's a great offensive mind. There's no doubt he's a great play caller, great recruiter, all that stuff. But it's like he doesn't seem to care about defense. And when he goes out and tries to fix it, when he hired Alex Grinch, then he's overly loyal when Alex Grinch isn't very good. So, yeah, I mean, if you picked USC to go to the playoff, like every single time I saw USC in one of those little 14 brackets that everybody's got a different graphic, right? You guys do. We have one 24, whatever. I'm like looking at it going, did a graphic designer screw up? Like, what happened here? Like, there's no way, there's no reason to do that unless they show that they have a good defense. And here's the thing. Imagine if Caleb Williams wasn't Caleb Williams.
I know.
Like, imagine if he was just a decent quarterback, like a well above average, but not freak Superman quarterback. I mean, that team would be like 7-5, 8-4.
Let's start the free Caleb Williams campaign. Let's get that trending on Twitter.
Right.
It's so bad. And like, I don't know that he has the receiver talent that he did last year, but I do think, and I mapped this out with a chaos scenario, he has the path to repeat as a Heisman winner, as crazy as that sound, how elusive that is, just because of all the things that we've talked about, all these things that look like USC has working against itself. And if he overcomes those things and makes some of the plays that he does, like, that path is there. Your SEC predictions, you've got 3 5-7 teams that I looked at: A&M, Mississippi State, and Mizzou. After you had them going 5-7, did you say to yourself, crap, I probably shouldn't have had them going 5-7?
No. I mean, just no. Like Missouri, I don't know about their quarterback situation. I don't get it. I don't understand why people are excited about Brady Cook. And Texas A&M, man, like, what are we going to be fooled consistently? I don't even know if Bobby Petrino is a good offensive play caller in this day and age anyway, right? He was back in the day. I don't know if he's a good play caller now. The personality thing is a massive, massive problem. I mean, can you imagine look, I don't even know if Jimbo Fisher actually means he's going to let Bobby call the plays to begin with. So what happens when Bobby really calls the wrong plays? Then it's going to get super messy. And on top of that, I don't know if they have a good running back core, and I don't necessarily trust Connor Wegman or Max Johnson. So when I saw Texas A&M in the AP Top 25, it's like, oh God, again with this stuff. Again, like people always say, I always hear, like even with the Notre Dame conversation, Notre Dame's always overrated. Well, A, that's not true. I mean, historically, that's not true. They're properly rated. And then B, Texas A&M actually is that team that is always overrated. So I know that if I'm wrong, which I don't think I will be, but if I'm wrong, Texas A&M fans are not ever going to let me forget it. And then Mississippi State, it's Mike Leach. Mike Leach is so historically good. He's a landmark figure in college football and sports in general. I love Zach Arnett. I think Zach Arnett might be the right guy. And I love the fact that he has sort of taken the right approach. He's saying all the right things. But I mean, to think that you're going to go 7-5 or 8-4 when you're trying to replace literally a legend, I don't see it. Nor should Mississippi State fans, and nobody should judge Zach Arnett by the season either, because there's no real blueprint for this.
Replacing a coach who died and having to step in and make those changes and tweaks, it is really atypical. We talk about, what does it look like for an interim coach? Well, he's not an interim coach. He's had to hire his staff, and so those decisions will definitely come back to him. I want to get back to A&M though, because if they go 5-7 again, if they have that year that every single week it's just a new disaster, it doesn't work from the jump, because that's essentially what you have playing out here with the loss to Miami early in the season, where it feels like that's when we're really going to find out who A&M is. Have you been saying that they're going to pay the $76.8 million, or are you saying that they're going to have the coup to get Jimbo Fisher fired, and then we're going to have a lawsuit that's, I don't want to say quite like what we saw from Jeremy Pruitt, but maybe a different degree, because the money is exponentially greater?
I don't think they can fire him after the season. The dollar figure is just too big. We actually finished last season with like a running figure of what it would cost for Jimbo Fisher to be fired after each and every game, and also after every season. It's too much. The thing is, okay, yeah, you could have A&M boosters, pass the hat around and get a lot of money, but I don't think even that would be enough to to get rid of him. I think the bigger thing is when the revenue checks start coming in from the new TV contract, how big are they at right off the bat immediately? Because would you take a short-term financial loss for the potential of massive, massive gains if you win a national championship or make the college football playoff? That has to be like the breaking point, right? There has to be a dollar figure in there where it makes sense. And, it's kind of the same conversation that's been going on, or at least was going on, with Florida State and Clemson in the ACC. It's like, all right, if you're going to get, BNY Mellon or JP Morgan Chase to sort of bankroll you to leave the ACC, like Florida State had tossed around, why can't you do that at Texas A&M? You can, but there still is a point where it would be such a financial hit that you just don't, you can't do that for the health and safety of your entire athletic department. So I don't think they're going to fire him. I think it might be a couple years. And I mean, what an awful situation to be in if you're Texas A&M. You just basically have a lame duck coach for multiple seasons. Yeah, you can recruit, but all these recruits we saw last year, they get the bag and they leave. Good for them. They're making their money, but you might see a lot more of that if Texas A&M struggles again.
Who does get fired in the SEC this year?
I don't think. I know I'm going to say nobody, but then somebody, like, it's just, there's always a situation that arises. I guess the one that would be most likely would be Billy Napier. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't think Florida's going to be that great this year, 6-6, 7-5. They do have the potential for like a 4-8 disaster, right? If that happens, okay, yeah, then that might be a possibility. I don't necessarily think it will, but I guess the floor is that. So I guess it would have to be Billy Napier, although, like I said, that would be stretching. I think pretty much everybody is safe. I guess Eli Drinkwitz might be in that discussion too. That would only happen if Missouri doesn't have a proper view of itself within the SEC, but maybe they don't.
I gave him a buyout, though, that's significantly increased. Now it's in the $20 million range, and that was an extension
they can do that, though. November. I mean, with the new money that's coming in, like, I know it sounds crazy because remember, like 2-3 years ago, it was like, oh my God, $12 million. That's insane. Well, now, 20, you could get away with that. Especially if you negotiate it down a little bit. It's a lot. Don't get me wrong, it's a lot, but I don't necessarily think it is that crazy.
The Mizzou thing, though, is they want to be stable. They're the team. I talked about this with Hester last week. They're the team that we're not talking about in the offseason at all, despite the fact that they have kind of a one-of-one situation right now with the contract, with the way that they're trying to elevate recruiting, with what they're doing with NIL, with if you stay in state, you can accept that NIL money as a high school athlete. And the interesting thing is that if this contract hadn't been agreed on, I think I'd be right there with you. I'd be like, yeah, Drink is the most likely person to be fired from the SEC this year. And then I think to myself, okay, so what would cause an AD to do a 180 like that? And be like, why would she have agreed to that buyout? It's almost like you agree to a buyout like that so that you can't fire a head coach. And I think some of these athletic directors don't want to necessarily be in that spot. And they want to say, well, you know what? We just point to that buyout. We got to give them a little bit more time to be able to make it work. Weird move all around. You have Bama losing to Texas and LSU. If that happens, the state of Alabama just shut it down. Like you've essentially mapped chaos into the college football world in a way that I don't know that we've seen from Alabama in recent memory. The way that would be perceived from both of those losses would be catastrophic.
Yeah, it would. It would be essentially 2010 when they were 9-3, and then lost. I think was that the Trevor Knight year? No, that was not. That was
that's way before. Yeah.
I think the quarterback situation's a problem. I think the biggest thing that nobody's talking about is I think Nick Saban grossly misjudged how the transfer portal windows were going to operate. I think that he felt that there were going to be more options in the spring, and that's why he didn't necessarily go after any quarterback in the winter window. Whereas Lane Kiffin got every quarterback. He just was like at the shopping mall, just like grabbing every piece of clothing he possibly could. I think because of that, Tyler Buchner is the best of, or not best, I would say he's one of the better of some average options in the portal. I'd say that Auburn got the better quarterback out of the portal than Alabama did. And I think in this situation, if you're Nick Saban and you have to go out and tell your quarterbacks, make me start you, that's a problem. You know, you sort of, if you go back and look at Nick Saban's words when he has quarterback battles, almost exclusively when he's happy, he says, I want somebody to take the bull by the horns. When he says, make me start you, that means ain't nobody making him choose right now. So, I mean, and here's the thing too, are we really sure Tyler Buchner's good? Because I always make the joke watching that Notre Dame bowl game last year. And I don't even smoke, but I needed a cigarette after watching Tyler Buchner. I mean, it was just like all over the place. And then he lost. I guess it wasn't necessarily him. He got hurt in the Marshall game, but they didn't play well. And they lost to Ohio State. Those are the only views we have of Tyler Buchner. So I think it's a pretty significant concern. And if they were getting Texas later in the season, then okay. But Texas is loaded offensively. And if they force Alabama into a shootout, I don't know if they can keep up, especially in week 2.
So you have LSU beating Bama. You have them running the table in the SEC, losing that opener to Florida State Sunday night down here in Orlando. Do you have LSU beating Georgia as well in the SEC championship?
No.
And perhaps getting to the playoff? No.
Okay. No. I mean,
just making sure.
Georgia is just a machine. LSU's, I think, better than last year. And honestly, you know, the 50-30 score in the SEC championship game last year, like that game was really not as close as the 20-point game. But, you know, LSU could probably make them sweat a little bit. But no, I don't think LSU can handle that.
You have them losing in the opener, though, to Florida State. Was that the prediction that you had before the Mason Smith injury? Or not the Mason Smith injury, but the Mason Smith suspension as well?
Yeah, I think Florida State's really good. I think with LSU and Mason Smith, they can work around that because they have. Like, we've seen it. They know how to do it. But they were counting on being a little bit more creative with Mason Smith in there. So now they can't do that. So more or less, you know, you can't really build upon what you had as much as you'd like to. So with Florida State, I think the biggest thing for me is I think LSU addressed its biggest weakness pretty well in the portal, that being its secondary. But none of those guys are 6'4". Like every Florida State receiver is 6'4" or taller. So it's just a bad matchup at a bad time for LSU. So yeah, Florida State, I picked them to win before, obviously with the Mason Smith suspension. I'm going to stick with that, but I'm so excited about that game. It's going to be awesome.
Should be a lot of fun. Are you coming down to Orlando for that?
I am not. I'm at the house covering all of them. I would love to go down there, but
it's Sunday. You got nothing.
I know
on
it's
Sunday
Sunday.
night.
It's Sunday, and the kids are out of town, and my wife's going to be in Orlando with the kids at Disney World. It would make more sense, but that would also require me to spend even more money at Disney World in the days where they're not playing that football game. So maybe it is a better option to stay here.
Just saying, I'm very biased, but you can come down to Orlando and not go to Disney World, and it won't be the end of the world. I'm just throwing it out there. I know you got ties. But there are other ways to do Orlando. I'm just saying.
I wish I knew about those, but with a wife as a Disney planner, kind of hard for me to do that.
Yes, this is true. I want to get you out. I know you got to run here in just a sec. New clock rules. A lot of SEC fans are going to see them this weekend, and they're going to say to themselves, "Oh crap, it's not stopping after the first down." What should we make of this? Do you think it's benefiting the teams that are going to be more up-tempo, or is there a little bit of like, hey, if you want to take the air out of the football and you want to be what Alabama is aspiring to be this year, there's maybe a little bit more promise in that strategy?
I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, honestly. I don't think it was a big deal last week during week 0. I mean, I think maybe the up-tempo teams will probably have to alter a little bit of how they operate. And the defenses will too that are playing those teams. But by and large, I don't think it's going to be the big. I think I saw a stat Sunday afternoon where it was like an average of 6 fewer plays or something like that.
Yep.
All right. That's fine. It's I like the fact that they still go back to the old rules with 2 minutes to play or under 2 minutes to play. So that's fine with me. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal.
Last one, karaoke group song for next year. I actually dipped out early for the karaoke
I
group
know.
song this year.
Very disappointed in you.
I think I left at like 11:30. I had Beamer the next morning that I had to be up really early for, and I was with him all day. So I was like, I can't be out till like 1 or 2 without a voice. This would be a rough look. I did feel bad for that. Seeing a video afterwards. I got 2 suggestions though, and I'll be there for next year. We'll make the group song happen. I have my 2 duets, but I'll be there for the group song as well. Got to go boy band. I think I Want It That Way is up there. I think Tearing Up My Heart.
I like it.
I think those 2, I'm not criticizing Jump Around, but I'm just, or Nickelback. I am criticizing Nickelback, but boy bands play.
Don't hate Nickelback. Nickelback's good. I know they're like they're the formulaic, whatever. Nickelback gets a bad rep, and I will die on that hill.
Okay, that's fine. We started off with a hot take about Notre Dame, and we closed with
so
Nickelback.
No. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. We've kind of gotten too far away from like, I think we need to bring back the songs from like 18 and 19, because they're still good. And I feel like the audience has changed. Right.
Okay.
And so they still think like Miss New Booty by Bubba Sparks would slap, or,
you think that always.
Well, it always does.
It does. That's true.
Pony by Genuine would be solid.
I don't know that we have the roster to do that song proper justice.
Well, then we have to recruit.
That's true.
We have to recruit better.
Yeah. Okay. That's the answer for everything in college football. We got to recruit better.
Yep.
Just got to be able to make it happen. Barrett, you're the best. We'll do this again real soon, man. Appreciate it.
Later, Connor. Thanks.
Bold and Brash, week 1. It's good to be here, man. I feel like this is one of the few times that we have not had to attach way too early bold and brash predictions to something. It's good that we can actually make predictions with things that are just happening in a few days. That's beautiful. Well, I don't think we're going to do bold and brash every single week, but maybe like every other week or something like that, just because I do want to get obviously people's impressions of what a game could look like, but I miss bold and brash on a regular basis. It's good to have it back.
Yeah, it's really up to you, the viewer. If you guys are very good or very bad at it, I think we'll do it more because I like to laugh and I like to watch people win. So
yeah, just don't be mid.
Yeah, just don't be mid. Just get out there. Go for it. Let it fly.
Rule of life. Yes. All right, let's start with this one from Jason Craigie. Jason says, Florida wins by 14 plus. Defense plays great and creates havoc for Utah all night long. And also LSU wins by 14 plus. The mask comes off of FSU and the real frauds show up in Orlando. Oof, the state of Florida would have a very different balance of power if that played out like that. Mm-hmm. Florida last year, man, it felt like they played in so many thrillers. The amount of blowouts that they had, pretty few and far between. South Carolina, Texas A&M, but even South Florida, LSU. Well, I'm talking about blowout. Just blowout.
Yeah, it scored like 3 straight touchdowns, the biggest ever game.
True.
But yeah, true. I think. Hey, listen, the whole season was thrilling. You're right. Like every week was something. Which is year 1 head coach. I'll do it.
What do you think is more likely of those two? Florida State losing by 2 touchdowns to LSU, or Florida winning by 2 touchdowns at Utah?
Oh man, I think Florida getting after Utah is actually more likely than LSU getting after FSU. As weird as that sounds, I think that FSU is a team full of dogs. Yeah, and
wow.
Florida's already beaten and embarrassed this Utah team with I would hope would be a worse roster. I don't know.
We just flipped because I think LSU winning that game by 14 is more likely. I could see that happening. I could see walking out of that stadium on Sunday night and seeing a bunch of really depressed Florida State fans who have this look on their face of crap, we're still far away. We're still far away. And that's what it's supposed to look like. I could picture that more than I could Florida winning like that on the road too. That's the biggest thing that I come back to. But who knows, if Utah's situation, like they just can't throw the football. Maybe
well, that's the other thing too, is if Rising doesn't play, then it's like a whole other game where they might just have the SDE and just be like, and then Florida just punches them in the mouth again.
Yeah, could happen. let's go to this one from Jared Hollowell. Jared says, one of the big names in the SEC. Oh, God, I hope this doesn't happen. One of the big names in the SEC, like KJ Jefferson, Quinshon Judkins, Jaden Daniels, etc., gets hurt with a season-ending injury, crippling a team that would have a great season if not for that injury. Oh, boy. Really don't want that. Don't want that. Knock on wood, have not been too many of those bad injuries in camp. Not too many of those big headline name type things, non-contact things. I think they're managing reps a little bit differently than they used to and stuff, and trying to take it easy as much as possible. And it's not so much like, oh, we got to get these guys in shape, so we have to be able to have them out there for every single rep with the ones, all that stuff. So that might be part of it. The most devastating of those is KJ, because look, I love Judkins. I love Jaden Daniels. Do we think Lane Kiffin's going to be able to find a running back who can do some heavy lifting? Probably. Is he going to be as good as Judkins? No. Garrett Nussmeier? I'm just saying. I'm still intrigued. I know it would be devastating if Jaden Daniels went down. It would be, and for a guy that's been through a lot throughout his career, I would totally feel for him. That would suck. But Garrett Nussmeier, I want to see it. I want to see Garrett Nussmeier uncorked, the gunslinger. I'm not saying he's going to be Brett Favre or anything, even though I think he thinks he's Brett Favre. I'd still like, that would be, my mind would immediately go to that. Whereas Arkansas, you take KJ Jefferson out, all of a sudden it's like, oh boy, our options
we saw
are
it
limited.
last year. Yeah. That I hate that prediction, because number one, it feels like rooting for injury, and then number two, it feels like you could slant almost any injury to prove you right, because it's like, oh, Alabama lost their left tackle, now they lost a game, I was right. It's like, all right, man, I don't like rooting for injuries.
Yeah, no, I just want everybody to have fun and everybody to stay healthy. That's all we're rooting for. Michael Dark says, in the first edition of Big Ten on CBS, still weird, Indiana upsets and Ohio State University. Gary gets so fed up with trying to pronounce all of the Eastern European last names in the Big Ten that he spontaneously combusts.
That we didn't think about that. That's a really good note. That like in the SEC, you really don't have a lot of crazy names, to be honest with you. You're messing up like Mark Ingram and stuff. You got these use checks and stuff up there. That is gonna be Gary's just gonna be like white flag by halftime.
Look, Gary's Big Ten guy. This Big Ten guy. He's a Purdue guy. You know, he grew up in Michigan. I think he's gonna do okay with that group of people. Gary Danielson to the Big Ten on CBS, which he's still calling games on CBS this year, this last year of it, but in the first part of the year before we get SEC on CBS games, he'll be doing that. But it is the equivalent of Pete Golding at Ole Miss. That's what this is, how this is going to feel. You're going to have like people that like nobody for Alabama. I shouldn't say nobody, but there are way more people that root for Alabama that will not be rooting for Pete Golding to have success at Ole Miss. And there are a lot of SEC fans that will not want to see Gary Danielson thrive in his element, but he could very well be in his element. And maybe that's just the type of people that will be more tolerant of him than SEC fans. I don't know. It's just going to be weird. It's going to be really weird. I'm not going to be getting used to that anytime soon.
Yeah, I hope he does a great job. I would not wish Gary deciding that my team stinks through the first quarter on anyone. I've had so many games where I'm like, Gary just decided we were going to lose today. 3 drives into this one, and he's just not going to change that opinion. We're up 20. Like, okay.
I like how Michael slid that in there, that my alma mater was going to beat Ohio State. Look,
don't take the bait.
I'm not even going to tell you no, it can't happen. I'm just going to say no. Crazier things have not happened. That would be the craziest thing. That would be the number one thing. All right. Grant Haney says, with all the focus being on who is QB1 in Tuscaloosa, it's the defense that steals the show and accounts for 3 pick sixes, shades of Bama A&M 2015. Kool-Aid McKinstry takes 2 interceptions to the house, and Caleb Downs has the other, putting the nation on notice. Kool-Aid also records his first career punt return for a TD, and the Tide rolls 52-3. Let's just stick with that one because we got a limited time here. 3 pick sixes would be if there's a way to make a statement against Middle Tennessee, 3 pick sixes would do the trick. It's going to be a more defensive focused team. They're going to play in lower scoring games, and not just because of the clock rules. That's just going to be more Alabama's identity. I think they're going to be content with that. And if they got more points from their defense than their offense. I don't think Nick Saban would hate that. Probably be a little bit frustrated, but worse things have happened. Just saying.
I mean, I think it's one of those, like, how many games of murder ball is it going to take for, like, the national media to just be like, oh, Kevin Steele, Alabama's back, or they just put him over Georgia. Like, Georgia fans could be furious. Like, you guys see where we're mad all the time. It's just going to be like 3 shutouts for Alabama. It's like, well, they're back, no questions asked.
Yeah, Bama shuts out Texas in week 2, slides into that number 1 ranking. Georgia fans are like, come on, man, what are we doing here? That's not fair. All right, let's go to this one from Joshua Morris. Joshua says, Tennessee gets off to a slow start against Virginia, losing 24-7. Oh, they're down 24-7 at the half when Tennessee keeps them scoreless in the second half, winning 45-24 with Joe Milton throwing for over 350 yards. Small, Wright, Sampson rushed for over 300 yards. Tennessee defense has 2 interceptions and 1 as a pick 6. That's not that crazy. Look, 24-7 is a lot. If 24-7 in the first half happens, there will be some panic in Nashville. I don't know if Tennessee fans are prepared to drink that much at noon, but there would be a lot of panic alcohol consumed. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, we've seen it. But storming back the way that they do, they haven't had a lot of games where they've had to do that. They got off to a rough start against Pitt last year and came back and looked great and win that game in overtime. That hasn't necessarily been a staple of the Josh Heupel era, to come back after being down big and all of a sudden the offense gets going. It's kind of like it feels if they either have it or they don't, and it based on how they respond after they get through their 3 scoreless possession drought. Less so last year when they had the number 1 offense in college football. That's more of a 2021 thing. But that has not been Tennessee's identity to this point. It hasn't really had to be their identity necessarily. Like they come out against Kentucky and okay, this is over. Against LSU, you're like, this is over. This is not a game. You don't have to come back and win. Who knows? Maybe we would do Tennessee some good to come back from down 17 scores to Basura, Virginia.
Yeah, I'm not taking the bait there. Like I said, any solid team, any mid team, I'd be like, you know what? Maybe this Virginia team is Basura.
Yeah. Let's go to this one from Emery Picker. Emery says, Florida loses big time to Utah and a hobbled Cam Rising. 17 plus they lose by to Utah. It's more the altitude that plays a factor than anything. We'll play the results with that. We played the results last year with the Utah thing. Chris Budden talked about that, about all the different things Kyle Whittingham was trying to do to get him ready for the humidity in the season opener. How much of that plays a part? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know if players would actually be willing to admit that. We'd have to get them on the whoop or something like that, looking down and being like, oh yeah, this really did impact me. I couldn't breathe in the middle of the third quarter. This was really, really bad. But we probably won't know how much it's really impacting them. Now, if they lose 42-0, we're like, yeah, Florida, there's a reason they don't play in this altitude. They weren't ready for this. If they get blown out in a game like this, even against a hobbled Cam Rising, that will be what we say. So just go with whatever happens, and then that'll be how Florida handles the altitude.
Yeah, I love there are still people out there clinging to like, well, SEC teams never leave the South, which is like the funniest thing that's ever been said. And like, well, you caught us. If we just had to play in a little bit of nippy conditions, we wouldn't have won 16 of the last 17. It's all a farce. All the nice weather places have all the playoff games. But yeah, I think you're right. It's like if the altitude was clearly a factor, but I think that's just going to be whoever is copium.
To be fair, I support that. I want to see SEC teams go all over the place. I'm not saying that it's going to, they're all of a sudden going to lose and be a shell of themselves. I just want to see it because I think it's fun. I think it's fun.
No, I want to see it, but people try to discredit the SEC by being like, well, they're scared to leave the South. And I think that's ridiculous.
Yes. Georgia would go up to Wisconsin and win in Madison by 4 touchdowns. I have no doubt about that. But I want to see this. I want to see this because I think it's been a part of the sport that's been largely overlooked at too many key points. And the good thing about the expansion of the playoff is that we should be seeing that in a hurry, and we'll have a lot more of those matchups.
Hey, listen, never forget Leonard Fournette's romp through the Carrier Dome. I don't know why they made him do that, but he did it.
Yeah, who could forget air-conditioned Carrier Dome? I don't know if they have air conditioning, actually, in the Carrier Dome. I think they've had times where they haven't had AC in there, and it's been a problem. It's been a real issue. Got to adjust to that northern New York indoor humidity that takes over. Let's end with this one from Andrew DiGiacomo. Andrew says, Harold Perkins is the difference maker this year against Florida State. Travis has a terrible day, and Florida State can't get anything going offensively. LSU cruises to a 3-score victory as Daniels accounts for 4 scores. The only LSU cruising to a 3-score victory, that's bold. Jordan Travis having a terrible day. Just a terrible day. I don't know that he's got a whole lot of those left in his career. Kind of just finds
That's the whole point of Jordan Travis. Is the worst he usually is mid, because he just doesn't take those kinds of risks. Like he just gets 5 yards at a time and just
just a smart player who doesn't make those catastrophic mistakes. Not the type of guy that's going to throw 2 pick sixes on you and you're just like, what in the world are we doing here?
It's not going to go 36 minutes of game time with a completion.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's never had to run for his life with Harold Perkins chasing him down. So who knows? Maybe Harold Perkins is the difference maker in that one. Okay, I have a lad of the week. It's football related, but kind of sort of not really. My lad of the week, we might have the same one, Will. We might have the same one. This might be one of the first times that we've had the same lad of the week. I have Diddy.
I'd be shocked.
Do you have Diddy?
Mm-mm.
Like Puff Daddy? Sean P. Diddy Combs, as I call him.
I know who Diddy is, yeah.
Making sure. Okay, just making sure. He donated $1 million to Jackson State's developmental fund. He made that promise during the BET Awards, I think it was last year, delivered on that in Jackson State's season opener, told Harry Lyles on ESPN, if it wasn't for HBCUs, I wouldn't be here. Supporting HBCUs isn't just my honor, it's my responsibility. Love to see that. If you know the history of some of this with how underfunded these universities are from a federal standpoint, you know that it is the biggest hurdle for them to be considered even group of 5 level. And that's why they do their own thing. They play their own schedule. And occasionally they get to play a Power 5 team. I know a lot's been said about Notre Dame finally playing an HBCU this year. And there's just so much more that needs to be done for these schools that have great history, great tradition. And yes, it's great that we're no longer living in a time where, an overlooked black player like a Walter Payton, a Jerry Rice, a Steve McNair needs to go to a place like that to make it to the NFL. Like, it's great that we have different ways to discover black athletes. I think that's awesome. But for these schools to continue to get the funding that they need people like that in positions of power to step up. Love seeing that. Thought that was a very cool opening weekend moment.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think I'm with you. And another guy who's done great work there is Chris Paul. He always has like the HBCU logos on and stuff. And I mean, it's so hard, right, if you're one of those athletes, because it's like, why do you go to one? It's like, well, bro, like even if you're a top 2 player, if you go to an HBCU, like all the scouts are going to be against you from day one. So it's like, it's so hard to change something like that. And honestly, like that's one of those things where it's like you have to give Deion credit, no matter what you think of him, is that he at least got the conversation going. Not that he contributed to Diddy, because obviously Diddy's a graduate, like he was about that life before, but it feels like that conversation is happening more and more. The decision that Travis Hunter made and everything. So yeah, definitely agree. I think that's important. Mine is actually a pretty funny one. Sam Darnold is the lad of the week.
Oh.
Now, Sam Darnold is a good example of a guy who's just kind of bumped around the league. Sam Darnold. Hero of the 2017 Rose Bowl. Who could forget? Not me forgetting that game happened, but Sam Darnold definitely has.
That game was so much fun. That was peak Penn State with the Saquon run in that game. Like, I had a blast. That was like maybe one of my favorite non-playoff games ever.
Yeah, I just I like looked up his name to just see if there were any quotes on it, and there's just a full 6-minute recap of that Rose Bowl. It's just been like playing on the side of my screen. It's like a little bit of a cause. Like, it seems super cool. But yeah, I think that it's interesting, and this is like kind of a meme, but it's kind of not, because it just goes to like guys sticking with it and not giving up on themselves, and the amount of like kind of look in the mirror that an organization like the Niners, who, I mean, probably top to bottom are as talented as the Eagles minus the quarterback position. The amount of look in the mirror that they had to do to trade Trey Lance to the Cowboys for a 4th-round pick after giving up what they did for him, just kind of goes to show that, like, if you're a guy like Sam Darnold, you enter in that situation, no one gives you a chance, right? You're just like, well, I'm behind, this wild story in Purdy, who we still honestly have no idea who he is, because he got hurt kind of toward the end of the last year. Then you have Trey Lance, who's like the golden child who will keep getting chances, because organizations never double back on those decisions. They just ride these guys into the ground, and they're like, you know what? That's our guy. We don't care. We've seen it over and over again across sports, where like the GM drafts the guy, and he's just like, look, I don't care if this guy stinks. We got to get something for him. And the fact that they actually kind of turned their heads, looked at Sam Darnold and said, if our guy goes down, we want somebody who's, been a starter in the league. Now, how effective so far, who knows? But I think that it's going to be interesting if we see. I mean, I think that we are at a point with the Niners where we can kind of say their quarterback situation. Like if the guy who starts game one is the same guy at the end of the year, that would be the first time in a very long time. I don't even know. I mean, at least last 5 or 6 years that we've seen that. It's actually kind of wild. I saw an ESPN podcast the other day. I heard it that was like going through the amount of quarterbacks they've had and how good they've been. And it's like so underrated that they've just had to deal with that constantly in the Jimmy G era. But point being, just credit to Sam Darnold for not viewing that as a job that was just already sewn up and making his statement. And also credit to the Niners for saying, hey, we're not going to make this weird 3-headed monster thing. And we think that Sam Darnold gives us the best chance to win as our backup today. He's a guy who's going to probably start a game based on how things have gone. So it's going to be interesting for him to get in this like friendly system. And the funny thing about it is people would say, like I saw something the other day that said, if Trey Lance was drafted by a team like, the Jags or something, and then was cut loose, you'd be like, oh my gosh, we got to get him in Shanahan's system and see how he's going to play in a different system. And so of course, like now everyone's getting out of Trey Lance. So I think he's a fine player. I always say that like, if a quarterback has one thing, that's kind of can be enough to build on. You look at, Anthony Richardson is right now as a player. It's like you are a dynamic athlete. I think that's obviously what he is. So yeah, hopefully he gets a start. This isn't like dumping on Trey Lance, but I think that it's cool to see a guy get another chance, and hopefully he does the most with it in a great situation.
I'm old enough to remember when people were saying Trey Lance was a better prospect than Justin Fields and Mac Jones. Just saying, just throwing it out there, not to pour dirt on the guy's grave or anything like that. Hope he has success, but yeah, just a weird draft pick in the way that all shook out. And as you said, good for Sam Darnold for battling it out. The guy who's had a strange start to his career after we were saying really similar things about him coming out. Okay,
Connor, how does it feel for the first time in your NFL watching career to be like, you know what? It's really easy to make the right decision on a quarterback. You simpletons. Okay, we got a franchise guy. All right. So
it's a great feeling if they could throw forward passes this year and just have DJ Moore score on every single screen pass. I would be ecstatic. It would be great. It would be something unlike anything I've had in my entire professional football watching experience. So not to discredit the great Eric Kramer, but yeah, we're holding out hope that this is going to be the year that it actually looks the part. Just show me that Justin Fields is a franchise guy that's worthy of a long-term contract. That's all I really want. And if I get that, I'll be happy. Okay. We are going to recap pods. We're going to do our recap pods on Sunday. They will come out early afternoon Sunday, and then our preview pods moving forward will come out Thursday morning. That's going to be the plan moving forward. Leave us a 5-star review if you have not. If you don't subscribe to this podcast already, you should. Follow us on X. Yep, still saying that. At the SDS Pod, at CJ O'Gara, at Go So Hard. Join the Facebook group. Hear your name read on air with Figuring Out or Bold and Brash. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.